Thank you very much. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole agenda for Tuesday, June the 4th, 2024, 10 a.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time. And welcome to our June 4th meeting for Committee of the Whole, which I will now call to order. Are there any declarations of interest at this time?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I could, just I previously declared interest, and then there's an item on today's agenda, K1. It's for informational purposes only, and I just think for consistency, I'll take a step back, and if you could chair that item for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We are at our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nations and other Indigenous peoples, and on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. Item D on our agenda is community announcements. Members of Council, are there any announcements at this time under item D? I'm not seeing any at this time. You were slow with
I was slow with the uptake.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
I just didn't want to let this moment pass because June is National Indigenous History Month, and I just wanted to take the time to address that. And I think it's time for all Canadians, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, and newcomers, to reflect upon and learn the history, sacrifices, culture, and contributions, and strength of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I think that when we talk about truth and reconciliation, I think it's important to share and learn. And so I just wanted to state that it is estimated that 150,000 Indigenous children were forced into the residential schools that operated from the late 1800s until the last one closed in 1996. I was 16. And while the schools, the children were, at the schools, the children were taught or forced to accept that they, their families, and their cultures were inferior to European culture and lifestyle. And the children learned that they were to be ashamed of their identity. And so I think that during this month that we can all take the time to learn and support, as what they're doing is attempting to relearn and regain and revitalize what was taken from them. So I just wanted to address that in this moment. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johns. We all can have a listen to that. Thank you very much. Are there any other announcements at this time? Not seeing any. I will move to item E for deputations, and we have T. Pilkington making a deputation to committee regarding the proposed Oriole Nature Park. Welcome. Good to have you in our chambers today.
Pardon me?
Good to have you with us today.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Mayor and councillors. My name is Tom Pilkington, and I'm speaking on behalf of many people in our neighborhood who are expressing their concerns by way of a petition against the proposed Oriole Park development. First, thank you for hearing our concerns. We hope the voice of these residents will affect the outcome of the project. We have three key concerns with the planned proposal for Oriole Park. The first one is disruption to the natural nesting grounds of the turtles. And number two, the rationale behind the policy driving this project. And number three, the need for undeveloped open green space for play. First, I'll talk about the turtles. East Gwillimbury has already posted signs indicating this is a natural open space and environmentally sensitive, and listed 5 reasons, other reasons why leaving the land as is the best. The proposal clashes with this signage since it will not leave it natural or open. It will draw more feet to trample the sensitive environment and will disrupt the nesting area of the snapping turtles that lay their eggs in this space annually. Artificial pathways and obstacles such as playground equipment in whatever form will disrupt the turtles' access to their nesting spots. We note snapping turtles are listed as a special concern under both the Ontario Endangered Species Act of 2007 and the Federal Species at Risk Act. There are fewer of them arriving to lay their eggs today than there were even 20 years ago. Encouraging more human activity on the land during the laying and the hatching periods will disrupt the turtles and may impact the outcome of both the laying of eggs and the survival of the hatched eggs. Any disruption of this green space, other than keeping the grass short for egg producing or laying purposes, will be detrimental to the turtle's survival. Second, we want to talk about the rationale. The town's objective is to provide public parkland within an 800-meter radius of all residential communities. And we say, or we believe that's noble, but we suggest is more important perhaps when dealing with higher density neighborhoods. Smaller lots may not give children the space to run and play, but the lots in the 800-meter radius of the park are generally larger due to septic bed needs. In addition, this is an area where kids already have lots of natural and developed spaces to play. Families who are new to the area and families who've been here for many years chose this area because of the larger lots, natural open space, and the woods. We were told that the equipment planned is designed for children under the age of 8. This is not a safe location to encourage greater use of this space for this age group. For example, there are no sidewalks. This may lead to adults driving to the location, which we are sure was not part of the plan. The cul-de-sac is not designed for parking. The pedestrian bridge trail already attracts multiple cars while being parked at the curb on a daily basis. Well, posted as a 40-kilometer-hour zone, vehicles sometimes speed down the street and delivery vehicles are frequent. The addition of more vehicles could lead to a dangerous scenario, in our view. The town and region have already spent more than $1 million on the bridge trail to connect our area to Anko Park. We question spending a further $500,000 on a few pieces of equipment and permanent pathways to develop Oriole Park. This is not the first proposal by the town to change this open space without directly consulting neighborhood residents. The residents have identified higher priority projects in which this money can be spent for outdoor activity and safety. The rationale for this project did not factor in what the voters of this neighborhood want or need, and frankly, that is a problem. Third, briefly, talk about open space. The neighborhood wants this green space to stay unchanged. Many of the homeowners told us they chose this neighborhood because of the natural environment. A point raised in the project's documentation to demonstrate how the project meets the Build Complete Communities stated to create infrastructure to support healthy and active lifestyles and connect residents with nature. Should not walking along a natural pathway to the river, having an open space to fly a kite or fly or throw a disc be considered healthy and active in nature? The current undisturbed land does not interfere with the turtles and allows for free play. Generally, children's lives are too structured. Please allow them to have unstructured play areas and to experience the excitement of discovering what a natural environment is really like and in their own neighborhood. While our community is strongly opposed to this project, we do understand that the project planning is well advanced. If the project is to proceed, we ask that it be relocated to another nearby area that would allow far more children to enjoy it and would be safer for the children to access. We ask that the Oriole Park be designated as permanent green space with grass cutting maintenance only. Now, I wanted to speak for a moment about process, but we have some late breaking news. And so I just want to go away from my remarks for the last few seconds that I have on the agenda and let you know that this morning there were 2 turtles in the open area laying their eggs. And as it happened, there's a grade 2 class at Park Avenue School that come by and use the pedestrian bridge on a weekly basis for the kids. And today they had to be by and they saw the turtles and went over and congregated in a little semicircle around the Chuck It Out. And my wife went over to talk to the teacher, and they actually have done a project on the turtles, the snapping turtles, at some length, I guess. And they just happened to be going by today, which is a nice finale to their project, I think. They said that they took a vote on whether the park should remain as it is or be changed, and guess what they came back with? They voted no. I mean, yes, for leaving it as it is. And they also said that knowing that we were coming today to do this deputation for council, they said that they'd be happy to give a presentation to the council on their project if you want to come to Park Avenue School before the end of the school year. So we hope our concerns voiced today will cause serious reconsideration of the project. Parks help bring people and communities together, but it doesn't always have to be a formal, equipped park to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for for being right on time today. Are there any questions from members of council? I'm not seeing any. Councillor Crone, could I have you move that, please? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you
you.
so much for being here. Are there any questions I didn't ask earlier when Mr. Pilkington was at the microphone? Were there any questions of him at this time? It was a great presentation. Thank you. We're now on item 2. And we have Jay Wong on behalf of Welland Land Development making a deputation to committee regarding item G2, Development Services Planning Branch Report DS 2024-14 Zoning Bylaw Amendment and Draft Plan of Subdivision Application Welland Developments 574 Green Lane East, File 19T 2021, ZBA 2026. Welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
I'll just remind you, you have about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Mayor. Good to see you back, and good morning, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jack Wong. I am a land use planner and a principal in Pilkington, Parsons, the planning agent on behalf of Welland Development. I wanted to first say that I'm very excited to be here today. It's a milestone that we have been looking forward to since the initial submission back in September 2020. This application has been in the pipe for almost 4 years now. There has been many different people and conversation and meeting had helped over the course of the last 3.5 years or so. I wanted to also thank Margot and Victoria and the planning team in advancing this application, had put together a very thorough report that is in front of you for today. I am not intended to repeat the content, what has already been covered in the report. I think there's a great deal of details in it. We had reviewed the report and support the recommendations that's put forward by staff. We also understand there has been a correspondence submission from Hala Mihalidi from Brady's, which is our trustee's office. And I will say that we have been informed prior to the submission of the correspondent, and Welland has been an active participant and a signed party to the cost-sharing agreement. So we are generally okay with the required condition in it that would apply to everybody within that cost-share group, including Welland. So happy to see that come forward for your consideration as well. With all that said, I again thank you for the opportunity here to speak, and happy to answer any questions or comment you may have. And we're very much look forward to proceed this application to the next stage of the planning approval process and bring the first phase of the development with the first 100 units and the commercial and the supermarket to on the ground, hopefully in the very near future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from members of council? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Mr. Wong. Wondering if you can give us an update on the status of the Howard House project and when we might start to see some movement of the building over to be our neighbor.
Absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Roy-DiClemente, there has been a lot of actions and progress being made with the Sharon Temple and the relocation project. I'm not directly involved personally. I had my last conversation with the project management team from Welland is that the anticipated site plan approval for the relocation project is hopefully in the summer this year. And the plan is to have the foundation work and the actual building relocation to be done before the end of this year prior to the winter season. So if everything goes according to schedule, I think we'll be soon seeing some on-site activity here just across the road some point later this year. And all the retrofitting and the interior works will carry through into 2025. So that's the latest I have, and there has been ongoing dialogues with the legal team in terms of finalizing the site plan agreement with the project. So it sounds to me everything's, all the ducks are now in the order. It's just a matter of getting through the housekeeping process, and hopefully that final site plan approval will be granted or delivered by summertime this year. So that's the latest I have.
That's great news. Thank you.
Other questions from members of council? I'm not seeing any at this time. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, would you move this? Thank you very much. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll be dealing with your report under G2 shortly. Now we'll move to item F in this presentation, Fire and Emergency Services Verbal Update. Chief. Good to have you with us. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm very pleased to introduce our new fire chief and member of the senior management team, Corey Mainprize. Chief Mainprize began as a paid on-call volunteer firefighter in Caledon and then went on to the city of Barrie, where he worked his way up through the ranks and eventually became fire chief. He has a Fire Services Executive Management Certificate from Humber College and holds a Master's Certificate in Public Administration from the Schulich School of Business. With over 25 years of fire and emergency services experience, we are certain that Chief Mainprize will be an excellent fit to lead our fire and emergency services team in EG. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Interim Chief Larry Broussard for his dedication and leadership over the last 5 months and throughout the recruitment process. On behalf of Council and our staff team, thank you, Chief Broussard. You were a great addition to our team, and it was a pleasure working with you. Thank you. And I'd like to now pass it off to Chief Mainprize to say a few words.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of Council. Thank you for the opportunity to, thank you for the kind words of introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to join your team at EG and continue to serve this community and continue on the tremendous work of Chief Broussard to deliver exceptional fire protection services to this community. Certainly, I'd also like to thank the members of the selection committee. I think this process and that group of individuals from the start to the finish and the onboarding is a real testament to the team that you've built here at East Gwillimbury. Their professionalism and efficiency is outstanding. So again, thank you for the opportunity to lead East Gwillimbury Fire. I'm confident we're going to do some excellent work, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Foster, would you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief.
No need of that. You go ahead.
I had the opportunity to sit down and have a chat with Chief Mainprize yesterday, and guess what? We talked fire. So I get along with anybody that I can talk fire with. You're going to be in good hands around here. You've got some good staff to rely on. I believe Chief Broussard is going to be around for a little while to kind of help the transition. I'm certainly only a phone call away. I don't know how much I can help or hinder. Who knows? But anyways, just welcome to the team. And like I say, if I can talk fire to somebody, I think we're in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you move that this time? Thank you very much. Be it resolved that the Fire and Emergency Services verbal update dated June 4th, 2024 regarding the introduction of C. Mainprize, Fire Chief, be received. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much and welcome. We're very, very excited to have you here with us. And I know we're at a great team. Thank you. Item number 3 on our agenda is, number 2 is S. Alibhai on behalf of York Region making a presentation to committee regarding the York Region Public Works Yonge Street Improvement Project update. They are doing a little bit of update there on Yonge Street. I think everybody knows, but now we're going to hear from you as well. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of Council. It's my pleasure to provide you with a quick update on the Yonge Street project. I have my colleagues with me today. Jamal Ahmed is the project manager on the Yonge Street project, and Jason May is his assistant. So what you see on the screen there is a rendering of Yonge Street when it will be finished. This is the Green Lane and Yonge Street intersection looking south towards the mall. Next slide, please. So as I said, quick presentation providing you with an overview of the project, progress that we are making to date on the advanced work contract. I'll speak about the next steps and construction timelines, and final a little bit about communications. Next slide, please. So Yonge Street is a busy corridor, 43,000 vehicles per day, a lot on the weekends, as you know. Pedestrian numbers are increasing. We have 4 lanes of traffic today with some turn lanes, left turn lanes and right turn lanes. It's a mix of urban and rural cross-sections with ditches, storm sewers. And the intersections need modernizing. We also have no facilities for cyclists, and there is no streetscaping. So as part of this project, we hope to improve. Next slide, please. So more lanes. So this is going to be a 6-lane project where we're going to widen Yonge Street to 6 lanes with dedicated left-turn lanes. We're going to have cycle tracks in the boulevard and wider sidewalks. In terms of safety, we'll have modernized intersections, signals, new lighting, streetscaping in the medians and boulevards. We're going to replace all the road asphalt, so brand new road. And we are already working on the utilities, brand new hydro infrastructure by Newmarket Tay and Hydro One. We're putting in new cables for Bell, Rogers, Telemax, York Region's YTN network, gas, updating some of the water mains. Next slide, please. So this project is being delivered in 2 phases. The advanced phase, which we are currently working on, is basically renewing the utilities, building retaining walls, building noise walls, and working on a couple of the intersections. And then the next phase, which will start next year, will be the road widening and reconstruction and the streetscaping component. Next slide, please. Next. So I'll start with the intersections. This is just outside Upper Canada Mall. Sort of on the right-hand side, left-hand side, you can see the new entrance to the mall. That should be open this summer. We're just currently, you can see the left side where the mall entrance is already complete. We are going to be working on the east side, which is where the dealership is. And in the future, this is going to be a road that connects to George Street as part of the new Newmarket's development plans. And in the inset, you can see what that intersection is going to look like. So just now, we just have temporary traffic signals because we're going to need that for the road reconstruction. Next slide, please. This is the intersection of Canadian Tire Plaza on the left-hand side and the Food Basics Plaza on the right-hand side. The entrances were not aligned, so we've already aligned them now. And, they've got temporary signals again right now, but as part of the road construction, we'll be putting in permanent signals. Next slide, please. I mentioned building retaining walls. This is retaining walls in the Metro Food Basics Plaza. I think I just passed by there. The railings are in now, and we should be finished this portion in the fall. Utility relocation is ongoing. Next slide, please. And this is the retaining wall just outside Silver City. Next slide, please. I mentioned building noise walls. There are 3 sections of noise walls we're building. And you can see on the left-hand side under construction and the finished product on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. There are a lot of utilities in this corridor. I mentioned Bell, Rogers, Telemax, YTN, Hydro. So, this used to be the ministry's road. So we have transmission lines going through here for Hydro One. And we are replacing everything in the corridor for Hydro. So it should be, a lot more reliable infrastructure for the future. Next slide, please. So these are, so we're putting in tall concrete poles Each pole is 75 to 100 feet tall. You can see on the right-hand side, that's a caisson that we have to put in for each of the poles. The caisson itself is like 5 feet in diameter and goes about 15 feet in the ground so that it can support the pole. The pole is like 20,000 pounds each. And we're replacing about 78 poles. Next slide, please. And this is a slide showing installation of the poles. The poles, some of them are manufactured here. Some came all the way from Alabama. Next slide, please. As part of the work, I showed you the caisson. Sometimes we have issues with utilities in conflict. You can imagine a 5-foot caisson occupying so much space in the boulevard, so we had to move some of the utilities. This is work underway in the boulevard to move water mains out of the way. Next slide, please. And this is a joint use trench under construction. What that means is that we have managed to get Rogers, Bell, Telemax, and YTN to go into one trench. Usually they occupy space in the corridor by themselves, but because we were so constricted in terms of space, we managed to get them into one duct bank. And that work is underway right now. Next slide, please. I'll now speak about the next steps. This is again a rendering looking north towards Green Lane. This is just right by the farm buoy. Next slide, please. So we are kind of in the middle of construction. We are coming to the end of the first phase. As I said, by summer, fall, we should be finished all the utilities, all the sort of underground stuff. And then we'll move on to the road reconstruction next year. Next slide, please. Next. So we have been working, but you hardly notice the work because it's in the boulevards, tucked away. But when we go to the next phase, you are going to see the construction on the road because we're going to be working on the road. Whenever we try to do these projects, I put this slide here, it is a balance between the needs of the community, the needs of commuters, and the needs of construction. If we favor one over the other, then things get out of balance. So for example, if we, think about commuters and say that we're only going to work, certain hours of the day, then that means construction takes longer, and we're there for a long time. So we try to balance. Some work we'll do at night because it's going to be intrusive in the corridor. Next slide, please. So we are going to maintain the 4 lanes of traffic that we have today. There are going to be lane reductions because, as you can imagine, for material delivery and stuff, we need to close lanes. But we'll try to do those off-peak hours. I mentioned that Yonge Street is busy on the weekends. We're going to put in the contract, no work on weekends. We usually try to keep, whenever we have bad weather days, we try and recover during the weekends. But considering that this corridor is unique in the sense that it is very busy on the weekends because of the big box stores and the mall, we are not going to work during the weekends. And we're going to maintain access to all businesses and residences. Next slide, please. So some mitigation measures. We are, as I mentioned, going to monitor traffic. We are going to provide advance notice when we can to residents in the community. We are going to monitor traffic on the side streets to, make sure that we are trying to keep people on Yonge Street as much as we can. We're going to monitor the traffic signals to make sure that they're working, the signal timings are in sync, and we'll address issues as they arise. Like I say, with construction, we can't predict everything. We will have issues for sure, but we're always there to deal with. We are a phone call away. Next slide, please. And these are some of the measures we take, communication, traditional media, newsletters, notices, and then we also have social media and presence on the webpage. Next slide, please. And that's the end of my presentation. Just a quick update. Be happy to take any questions.
Do we have questions? Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to our presenter. Thank you very much for this. It's exciting, and I really have to compliment you, and I'm sure our staff was involved with some of the design. I really like the addition of greenery and trees, and I know you've taken some environmental steps within that. I think it's perfectly on brand for our town, that when you go north on Yonge Street and you start seeing all these trees, it's green, it's very on brand for our town, so compliments to you on that. It's my understanding that by actually going that route, by adding trees and we're collecting the rainfall within those areas of the medians, it's actually more cost effective than had we just poured concrete and pavement. Is that true?
I wouldn't say that. I think it does.
Okay.
Again, it's a balance.
Okay.
It does cost money. Streetscaping is expensive, and green infrastructure is a thing. We like to do that where we can, especially as part of our 6-lane projects, because we're putting in wider road with a lot of asphalt. We try to balance that with putting in some greenery in the median. Now, mind you, I didn't mention that in the future, this road is set up that in the future, if we want to continue the BRT north between Davis Drive and Green Lane, the curbs are set up for the future. And at that point, we would take off the median and replace that with BRT. So to answer your question, it does cost money. We are putting in also underground infrastructure to help the trees grow, so not just put in gravel. So we're putting in planting soil material that will promote good tree growth.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Mayor, one more, if I might, through you to our presenter. You did mention that you were taking steps to mitigate disruption to not only the communities, but I'm also very mindful of the impact it'll have on local business. I think while not as the project's not as big as what happened on Davis Drive, I know that was very troublesome for local business. What assurances can you give us that business on Yonge Street in East Gwillimbury will have a minimal impact on their business?
As I mentioned, we try our best. We are doing a lot, of projects in the region, a lot of projects in Vaughan. This year we are working at 100 locations throughout the region. It is always our 100 locations throughout the region. It is always our intent to make sure that we do not impede, access to residences and businesses. We do our best. Again, as I said, will there be issues? Sometimes there may be, but as I said, we are a phone call away. We have staff on the ground who will monitor during construction, and we'll deal with those issues when they arise. And the staff have done a great job in visiting all the businesses. I can say that I think Jamal knows a lot of the people by name now, and they have his number. So I think we should be good.
Thank you.
And again, as I said, we're a phone call away. We work very closely with Mike here, and if there are any issues, then we'll be there to address them.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Alibhai. I appreciate the great effort that you're going to make sure that the disruption is minimized along the Yonge Street corridor. I'm a little bit concerned about the plans for Green Lane that seem to coincide with the work on Yonge Street. So as I understand it, there's a water main being installed in 2025 from Green Lane from Yonge to Second Concession. So that too will obviously create quite a bit of disruption, and that's also a major corridor in our community. What sorts of measures is the region putting in place to minimize the impact? Because this will be sort of doubling down or multiplying the driver and pedestrian and commuter frustration in the area. How can you assure us that that will be minimized?
So, as I mentioned, we will be doing what we can on Yonge Street. So as far as the water main, actually, there's also a microsurfacing project
Yes.
this year, but that's going to be work that's done at night. So where we can, we're doing, and I don't know, Amanda, we missed the slide on, there was a roadwork slide? There. Hard to see, I don't know if you can see it well, but I thought I'd put that. Yeah, that one. So we are going to be working on the microsurfacing. It's a very quick operation. It's done at night. As far as the water main goes, it is not like an open cut water main. It is directional drilling, Jamal? Right. So in terms of impact to the Yonge Street project, Jamal is working very closely with the team that is doing the water main, and we don't see any issue with that.
So you have had lane closures at rush hour on Yonge Street at Green Lane at 8 o'clock in the morning. I've seen that already. So we have seen an impact, and that's fine. That has to happen. But my concern is that you're also doing work on Highway 11 heading into Bradford. So that major corridor right now is the only way that people who live in southern Simcoe County can get home. And we're disrupting them in 3 ways.
So the Highway 11 work is also being done at night. Again, we're seeing where we can do things. So the work, it's not conducive to do the work on Yonge Street at night. And that's why we're doing the work on Yonge Street during the day. Highway 11 work we can do during the night. So that's what we're going to be doing. So by morning, traffic should be back to normal. Because it's a quick, paving job. And we can grind and pave at night and open lanes back in the morning. So that's the plan.
Okay, thank you. If I may, Madam Mayor, just quickly, as far as the number of lanes that you're installing, and I noticed you're putting in 6 lanes on Yonge Street, but in one of the overhead, I guess, reconstructions, it looks like one of those lanes is reserved. There's a diamond painted on the road surface. What is that reserved for?
So usually when we do 6-lane projects, we dedicate the the curb lane for buses or high occupancy vehicles. In my opinion, I don't know whether that would make sense here, in the sense that for a short section, whether we should have it or not, but down the line, we'll take a look at that and see whether that's something we do or not.
So it's not, even though it's in the pictures, it's not currently?
It's up to us whether we dedicate
Okay.
that or not, and whether we mark it as such.
Sure.
The lane's the same.
Thank you. I think it would be smart if we were to be consistent based on what's happening on Yonge Street South into Newmarket and Aurora. Thank you for your time today.
Any other questions from members of council? I'm not seeing any. I have a question that my granddaughter wanted to know. What happened to all of the artifacts that were under the road? And that York, in York, Highway 11 was one of the major roads to getting from Toronto to Lake Simcoe. Was there anything different or something fun that you found or something creative?
On Highway 11, we are going to be limited to just working in the road base, Madam Mayor. So we're not, going deeper.
Okay.
So I don't anticipate getting anything.
I just thought it was an interesting question when we were talking about the road itself, and apparently they're studying Yonge Street that has come from Toronto to Barrie, and in many, many years. So I thought I would ask. Thank
So
you.
as part of all major projects, we do archaeology assessments and studies, and if we do find something, then there's a process for that through the Ministry of, I forget the full name, it's Ministry of Culture, Heritage, and something.
Thank you. I know that it's been quite a project for you and your staff. As we watch it, it's not, some of it is not in East Gwillimbury, but we certainly use that road on a regular basis, and it seems that you've thought of most of the problems that could happen and have dealt with them. So thank you very much. We appreciate the road being wider and better and back to normal. Thank you very much. Could I have a motion to receive, please? Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you
you.
very much. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you. We are at item G with Councillor Roy-DiClemente in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a number of items on our agenda this morning. I think there's 2 prepared items. One is a joint development services and finance presentation on Bill 185, which is Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act 2024. Ms. Bégin, would you like to introduce this for us, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask our Director of Planning Policy and Growth Management, Jack Krubnik, to go through a brief presentation he's prepared as an accompaniment to the memo that's been provided. Warren Marshall will also be speaking to some of the changes that impact the Finance Department. But essentially, this new legislation has introduced yet another round of potential changes to the development and planning process. Some of the changes are sort of a correction back to what had existed previously, and some are still, still sort of being explored in terms of understanding what the full impacts will be. But I'll let Jack speak about that a little bit more.
Thank you and welcome as you walk us through the quicksand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. I will, next slide, please. I'm going to actually start off going through some of the items within the proposed Bill 185, and just give a short kind of snippet about each of them, and willing and ready to take questions at the end of this as well. In terms of removing barriers for additional residential units, some work has been done on this in the past, and once again, the government's proposing up to 3 units per household within any parcel of land within our settlement area that's on full municipal services. Also proposing to remove some barriers, and we'll see the extent of that, but in regards to potentially removing parkland requirements or minimum lot sizes or development charges. In terms of municipal planning reporting, the ministry is proposing expanding a list of communities to include our own to report on data around provincial housing targets. In terms of reducing minimum parking, this would really impact us around major transit, protected major transit station areas, and removing minimum requirements within those areas. Next slide, please. Enhancing framework for additional residential units. Again, removing zoning barriers to building small multi-unit residential to assist in the creation of residential units. And in terms of, I believe I presented on this earlier to council as well, in terms of the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator, removing that tool and combining it with the Minister's zoning order. There's also a new use it or lose it provision that's been introduced by the province. And it's a tool used to enhance and expand the municipality's ability to support the allocation of housing enabling infrastructure. So hopefully the intent is there to provide, have housing have to be built within a specified time period before that allocation is removed and moved to somebody else to build housing. Next slide, please. In terms of third-party appeals, one's perhaps a little bit controversial is to limit third-party appeals for official plans, official plan amendments, and zoning bylaw amendments. Again, the intent to have quicker planning approvals, but there's implications to interested parties on this item. Bill 109 refund provisions, remove refund provisions for that are in place presently and that were recently introduced, I believe a little more than a year ago in regards to planning applications. Also, municipal pre-application process. Proposal is to make pre-application consultation a voluntary tool within our planning process at the discretion of the applicant. Next slide, please. Another one that maybe has a little bit of controversy around it is the settlement area boundary expansion. Would be allowed to appeal, applicants would be allowed to appeal a municipality's refusal or failure to make a decision on a private request for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment that would change the boundary of an area of settlement outside of the Greenbelt area. Something that's a little bit newer as well is this idea of facilitating standardized housing designs. So the proposal is to create regulation-making authority that would enable the establishment of a criteria to facilitate planning approvals for standardized housing designs. And we'll see how that might play itself out in the future. As well, Council has likely heard of this already in regards to upper tier planning responsibilities being removed from several regions, York region being one of them as of July 1st of this year. Next slide, please. There's also proposed expedited planning approvals for community facilities such as hospitals or long-term care facilities, as well as exempting universities from student-led housing on and off campus from planning approvals, as well as changes to the newspaper requirements. And this one is something that might be perhaps required because of publications going out of business and the changing nature of that industry. So being able to provide us as a municipality some flexibility in how we provide notice. And again, we touched on this a little bit, but the third-party appeals and limiting that right. Next slide, please. This regards a little bit about around the Ontario Land Tribunal and would reestablish prescribed time for a municipality to review new evidence introduced at that body. And then also a new proposed provincial planning statement introduced by the government, and I believe comment period on that is already closed. It's introducing new and updated policies for the PPS. And if the province does adopt those would consequently revoke the old provincial policy statement and a Place to Grow and also amend certain regulations under Places to Grow Act. So that's some of the changes on the planning front. I'll pass it along to my colleague now, Warren Marshall in Finance, to address some of the changes on the financial impact of proposed changes in Bill 185.
Madam Chair, can we ask questions prior to?
Yes, I think that's a good spot for us to pause and answer any questions. And I think we've got Councillor Johns and then Councillor Foster. Go ahead, please.
There we go. We're good. Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted clarification on, I think the item that troubles me the most, and you may not have information on this, is the reduced minimum parking standards. And I agree that the opportunity as we are building communities in the future the opportunity to have increased transit and walkability, that the opportunity to be requiring less parking is a goal. I'm concerned that, like, when you look at the example of like the new Queensville subdivision, the intent of having some reduced parking or less parking results when you don't have the proper infrastructure. It's not like we have a robust transit system into Queensville. The result is that you have folks widening their driveways from turning into sidewalks, and then people parking up on the lawns. And it could be argued to say, well, when they bought the house, they signed the agreement that this wasn't the case. But like, everybody's just trying to live and do the best that they can, and there's no parking on. They can't park on the street. And so I guess, sorry, my long-winded way of getting to, do we have any clarity on these minimum parking, or these parking standards being minimized, like by how much, and do we have, what kind of control that we have over that? Like, I think in some parts of the province, sure, it will make sense, but does it make sense to EG? And that's what I think that kind of flips on my radar of a concern when I see the presentation like this.
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly it's a concern for myself and staff as well. Parking being an issue in East Gwillimbury. I will say that we're still looking for clarity on that. I will say that the biggest impact will be around our protected major transit station areas. So that's really the intent, to kind of drive lower parking requirements within areas that have higher order transit. That being said, too, I think there'll be a little bit of a market concern here, too, right? Like whether or not people will even be interested in, in a market like Toronto, you might say, you might have access to transit. People might take you up on purchasing a unit without that parking space. But certainly, I think it's not only desirable, but needed in East Gwillimbury. And I think it might be a tough sell even for a property developer to sell a unit without a parking space in East Gwillimbury.
Sorry, just as a follow-up. So do we, like, does the legislation say, like, drop a pin and then there's a radius and then that kicks in? Or is it just, it's very high level right now?
Through you, Madam Chair, my understanding is, again, it's within major transit station areas, and we do have 2 of those identified within East Gwillimbury. One is around our Go station, and the other is at Yonge and Green Lane.
So in other words, it wouldn't necessarily be the entire municipality, it would just be within those zones?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Foster, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to comment also on the parking minimums, but I think Councillor Johns has got to the most of it. That is a sore spot with me. I've spoken to staff a number of times about some of the things that we might be able to do to gain extra parking spots in established communities, and that's not just as easy as coming up with a statement about that. So I was wondering how that might affect us in the future in our established communities, but if we can keep it to the transit hub areas, that makes a little bit more sense to me. The other part that I was going to talk about was the use it or lose it tools, and the part that kind of confused me there was I can see it being a contentious issue as we move forward with many developers. But are those rules going to be made up by the municipality, or are there going to be a bunch of provincial rules that we will have to follow? I'm just thinking about in the future where, a developer says, I don't get punished, you might say, in another municipality like you're trying to do here in East Gwillimbury. I'm just wondering, are there going to be rules, provincial rules set down, or are we kind of going to be tasked with putting those rules together?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, my understanding is that the province would permit us to pass a bylaw to lay out how that allocation would work and what is the stipulations around that allocation. Certainly, I wouldn't imagine it impacting existing allocations that are out there already, but controlling future allocations that council decides to make.
And would that also not be some of the tools that we're employing now when we're putting in conditions in our agreements with the developers to say, you have this approval for a subdivision agreement, and it has an expiry date. There's a best before date on these agreements, so that we don't end up with situations with approvals and sitting on them for 10, 15, 20 years.
Through you, Madam Chair, similar, I think it gives us a little bit more teeth in the game to ensure that at the end of the line, there's not only your approvals and you meeting your conditions, but you actually putting shovels in the ground and getting housing constructed.
So this is actually more something that will protect us. This is a good news story.
That's the way I see it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Crone, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to our presenter. I think it's on slide 5 about upper tier planning responsibilities. When I look at this, I see this as a good thing. We passed our official plan, 2 years ago? And we're still waiting for the region to approve it, and now 185, as far as I understand it, does away with that, so we're good to go now for the province to approve it anyways. I do regret the time our staff spent negotiating with the region back and forth on it, but I think this is a good thing. I'm not a planner, though, so are there any downsides that you see with this particular provision?
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly I want to be sensitive to our regional counterparts. I think there is a lot of value that they provide in terms of feedback to the municipality, whether it's from an official plan perspective or other. I still see them as playing a very large role in our development applications because, frankly, they have a lot of infrastructure within East Gwillimbury. So, there's a lot for them to still comment on, a lot of conditions for them to still provide the community and our town staff within all of our application processes. So they will still be, I think, very, very active and very involved. And apologies, Councillor Crone, I'm not sure if I answered your question there perhaps, and I feel like I missed the mark a little bit. Maybe you could reiterate.
I was just, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a planner, and so I might not see this, I look at it through a political lens. I might be a little bitter at the point that we've wasted 2 years trying to get it approved. You've presented a very good, and I dare say diplomatic, response to the value that the region plays in this. So I do appreciate your commentary.
Certainly the intention is to expedite approvals a little bit and on the planning side of things, and I think this would probably assist in that way, because ultimately it would be the municipality that is the approval authority, and it wouldn't have to go to that extra level of the region.
Councillor Carruthers, please go ahead.
Thank you. There's a lot here, so thank you for breaking it down for us like this. I wanted to circle back to the parking minimums, because there's a lot of talk about transit, and transit is a huge part of getting people away from cars and needing those parking spots. But the piece that's not really talked about enough in here is the need for having walkability, having shops and services in the area. So it's not about being able to hop on a bus to get everything, it's about being able to walk from your home. So I would hope that when we're looking at plans of subdivision, that we're looking at the walkability and the availability of shops and services within a walk of homes, so that you don't need a car for every adult in the house.
Thank you. Any other questions before we shift into the second portion of the presentation? Okay.
Thank you.
Part 2. Go ahead, Mr. Marshall.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of committee. The changes that are proposed in Bill 185 that relate to development charges, many of them serve to reverse or clarify the changes that were made in Bill 23, which was the More Homes Built Faster Act that was enacted in November of 2022. So, for example, Bill 23 enacted a provision that any municipalities that passed new bylaws could only enact 80% of their new charge in the first year. And then in the second year, they could increase it to 85%, third year, 90% for 5 years, until after 5 years, they could finally impose their full DC rate that they had passed 5 years ago. So Bill 185 proposes to remove that requirement so that municipalities can actually impose their full rate on the day that they pass their bylaw. Excuse me. So Bill 23 also removed the ability for municipalities to charge for growth-related studies. And when I presented our new bylaw back in April and May, I had shown that there's about $10 million of growth-related studies that were in our previous bylaw that we could no longer collect for. So Bill 185 now reverses that and allows us to now start collecting for them. So which two things that are good news for the municipality. So to enact those changes, you would normally have to go through a process of creating a new development charge background study, have public meetings and have notice out. Bill 185 also proposes that if we're going to make these changes specifically for the phase-in and for the growth-related studies, there's a streamlined process that municipalities could go through where they'd only have to pass a bylaw and give notice that the bylaw has been passed. And that bylaw, which is normally appealable to the Ontario Land Tribunal, would not be appealable in this instance. Next slide, please. So Bill 23 also introduced the concept of providing an exemption from development charges for affordable and attainable housing. So a lot of the details were left out when it was tabled at that time. Bill 134, which was the Affordable Homes and Good Jobs Act, came out and refined some of the definitions of affordable housing to include some income-based and market-based criteria to determine what was affordable. They also said that the data that was to be used for calculating this affordability would be provided by the province through an annual bulletin, and the bulletin wasn't issued at the time. So last month, the bulletin finally got issued, and according to the data in that bulletin, a new residential home in East Gwillimbury that sold for under $500,000 would be exempt from development charges. And that is effective June 1st of this year. So a more administrative point, the Development Charge Act requires notifications to be sent out to the public through different parts of the process. So for example, for notice of a public meeting, you'd have to provide notice. And the Act said that you can only provide notice through a local newspaper or by mailing out to each individual landowner. So this proposal in Bill 185 recognizes the fact that local newspapers are starting to go away. So the proposal is that if there is no local newspaper, an advertisement on the town's website would suffice. And finally, a change that was made back in 2020 on the development charge collections. So typically a development charge would be payable when a building permit is issued, and the rate that would be charged is the rate in effect at the time that permit was issued. So Bill 108 came in and said for plans that require a zoning bylaw amendment or a site plan application, you'd still collect the development charge at building permit issuance, but the rate in effect would be the one at the time the application was made, which could be a couple years before you actually pulled a permit. So that was referred to as a development charge freeze. And the freeze was eligible for up until 2 years after the approval of the site plan or zoning bylaw. So this Bill 185 proposes to reduce that to 18 months to provide more incentive for developers to start building. So those are the summary of the key changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And most people probably think I'm going to jump on the development charge item, but I think that in these items, I think that the province recognizing that local newspapers are disappearing and then shifting the requirement to have it on the website, I think that we need to find a way of doing better for EG. I think that simply providing public notice on a website that somebody would not normally go to out of habit, I don't think that we as East Gwillimbury should be delivering on what the minimum requirement is on this. I think that the opportunity needs to be explored about how EG can kind of stand above in the opportunity to over-communicate with residents. And I don't know if that's anything that we can do at this table, but like I think the opportunity of continuous improvement and what better looks like, I don't think we should be attempting to hit the minimum standards what the province is asking for here.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall, and then I think Ms. Gandhi also wants to comment. And just to clarify, this is just relating to development charge changes. It's not about development processes and applications that we're receiving, correct? Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So a couple of points. One, when we did our bylaw this year, we didn't just put it through a local paper. We put our advertisements through social media as well. We advertised in various forms as well, so it wasn't just a minimum. This, since the development charge bylaw is appealable, if we don't hit these two marks, then someone could appeal and our charge would be ineffective. So, so that's why we want to make sure we hit those, but we do other forms of advertising as well. And I'm sure Ms. Gandhi could elaborate on that.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. So just in terms of how we're getting the message out, there's going to be a report brought to Committee of the Whole at the end of June with the results of the survey that we conducted over the last few months about how people are hearing us and getting information. So we will be sharing that along with some information around what we're looking at doing to further get the message out, how we're advancing some of our channels and how we're using them to not just inform individuals, but also to engage with them. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since Councillor Johns left it, I will talk about the development charges to you, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Marshall. I really appreciate the way this has been laid out, and it's quite substantial, the changes in Bill 185. And I think we have to take a moment, to reflect back when Bill 23 came out. We were pretty tough. There were a lot of things in that bill that we didn't like, and we said so. While this is not perfection, I think this is evidence that the province has been listening to us. I know we've been having discussions. Certainly when I was acting mayor, I got to speak to a provincial panel, and we talked about the disruption it was to our business model. So I'm actually seeing some movement here, and I think that's a good thing, and I think we have to recognize it. The fact that a house below $500,000 is not subject to development charges, I don't know when the last time I saw a house for that value being sold here. Now, maybe if we get some condo units coming, that would, and if they can sell them for that price, I think that would be great, and I'm sure I'd be certain if we could get people more into housing, I'd be quite happy to take the hit on the DCs. My question to you, Mr. Marshall, though, is are you with these changes, are you sleeping better at night now?
Sorry. Through you, Madam Chair. So I don't sleep well anyway, but this does help, and it is a good sign that the province is listening. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't know how to respond to that, Mr. Marshall. I'm concerned. Anyone else? Okay, so is that the end of the presentation at this time?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe it is.
Thank you, gentlemen. May I have a motion to receive, moved by Councillor Johns. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Maybe some chamomile tea. Next item on our agenda is Development Services Planning Branch Report DS 2024-14, zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications for Welland developments at 574 Green Lane East. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Johns. Okay, Ms. Bégin, would you like to tee this up for us, please?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask our Manager of Planning, Victoria Moore, to provide some context to this zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application. I note, and our Deputant, Mr. Wong, also referenced that there will be a slight administrative addition to include some language that was provided by the trustee. This is sort of normal matter, of course, but unfortunately it was just provided to us very late in the process. So I'll let Victoria speak to this application.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The staff report before you today recommends approval of a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment application for the property known as 574 Green Lane East. As you're aware, Council had previously provided 109 SDE units of servicing allocation to facilitate the first phase of this development, which will include a mixed-use block with a grocery store as the anchor, 9 single detached residential units, 9 townhouse units, and a mixed-use residential block. There's also a park block and a stormwater block included in this first phase. So a future site plan application will be required in order to actually facilitate the development. And the proposed development will have one access point in phase 1 onto second concession, and that is proposed as a full moves access. At full build out, there's a total of 4 entrances proposed. The details of those entrances will be worked out through the detailed design prior to registration of the subdivision application. And because we're talking about accesses onto regional roads, that will be subject to the approval of the region. So as mentioned previously, we're also recommending an addition to the recommendations listed in the report, and that's to include a new condition under Appendix 5 at the request of the Green Lane Landowners Group. And that's just requiring that the landowner provide confirmation that they're a member in good standing with the Landowners Group prior to registering the subdivision. And that recommendation has been provided to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of committee, any questions? Councillor Johns, please go ahead.
Similar to the theme that I was asking at another council meeting, Madam Chair, I just wanted clarification. Is the last paragraph in the resolution about should the registration should lapse in the 3 years? Like, is that a new paragraph that we're starting to see, like, kind of use it or lose it on the 3 years, or is that standard practice?
Ms. Moore?
Through you, Madam Chair. That is a standard practice under the Planning Act. We're just kind of listing it here just so that everyone is kind of aware, but we often see draft plan extension requests, so it is something that could come before. If they don't register within those 3 years, we could have a draft plan extension before council to approve an extension to that.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. 2 questions. The first one is about the entrance off of second concession. people accessing this block coming from Newmarket, coming from the 404, would be making a left turn off the second concession onto Street A. And I'm just wondering, will there be a turn lane put in there, or how will that traffic be managed? It's very close to the light.
Ms. Moore?
Through you, Madam Chair, so we have a traffic impact study that has been reviewed by the region, and they've included the appropriate conditions in the list of draft plan conditions. The detailed design of those intersections will be worked out prior to registration of the subdivision and subject to approval of the region and the town.
Thank you. And a second question, if I may. It's about the street naming. We have spent a lot of time as a council on our street naming policy. So I was very disappointed to see a name come forward that wasn't from that list. And I'm just wondering if you can provide some historical context of where this name came from and how it fits with our street naming policy. I see in the report it says that it's in keeping with our policy, but when I read our policy, I do not see where it fits as a historical name for EG or a significant person in EG. And I also just want to remind council that recently we had added names of Indigenous veterans to our street naming list, and a name like Blackbird might fit in better with some of these other historic names that are for the surrounding streets in that area.
Ms. Moore?
Through you, Madam Chair, so the Fuyin Way was added at the request of the applicant. So our street name policy does permit at this stage for requests for new street names to be added that aren't on the improved inventory. So the name, it does have a historic connection, although it's not local to EG. The category in the street naming policy does permit that, and it has been reviewed and approved by emergency services as well as York Region, including York Region Paramedic Services.
So there's not a historic connection to East Gwillimbury. So when our street naming policy talks about historic significance, I always assumed that meant a historic significance to EG. Or outstanding Canadians or veterans or heroes, natural features, botanical names, historical references to a location, individual, or event in the town of East Gwillimbury. So I'm not seeing it fitting into any of these, and so I don't think I could be supportive of that, only because we have spent so long on the street naming policy, and we haven't named a street really, I think, since we've adopted this policy. So to go against the policy we spent so long on seems a little bit counterproductive. So, Madam Mayor, when these list of recommendations come forward, if we could pull that one for a separate vote, because I'm happy to support the rest of the recommendations, but I won't be supporting the naming of the street. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor. I wondered about the name, but I also acknowledge that our cultural reality is also shifting, and that this might accurately reflect some of the businesses that are going to be locating in this area, and it would help to make some of our newer residents feel more welcomed when they see some of their cultural names and places reflected in our place names. So I don't know whether it's an appropriate time for us to suggest that we maybe open up that street naming policy in order to make it more inclusive. But that might be somewhere where we might want to go, and I'd be happy to entertain any comments from members of committee. Go ahead, Councillor Foster.
I'm glad Councillor Carruthers brought this up. I had the same thoughts reading the report. And one other thing popped into my mind. Again, this is kind of off of what we're talking about here, but I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we talked about having a street named for the late Jack Hosman, who was a longtime councillor here in East Gwillimbury. We had a developer step forward to try and rename a street for him. That became a little bit more difficult than we all anticipated it would be. So I think that maybe the idea of opening up the street naming policy and having something come back to us, I would be interested in having something there that says, you know, these are the names that we think are important that are tied to a certain area, and these are the ones we'd like to see used first. I don't know if that's the proper way to do it, but Again, just a comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I know we did, the list that the inventory that we do have is sort of broken out by community because we wanted to make sure that if we were naming somebody who had a reference to Sharon, that they weren't being their name wasn't being used in Mount Albert as an example. Aside from the street naming, any other questions or comments? I did want to also echo the concerns about access when we start to deal with the site plan, and not only the access off Second Concession, but the two entrances off Green Lane. I anticipate that they will be designed as right in, right out, but we will need to make sure that there is a safe way of entering into this area from those two busy intersections. So, anything further? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to split out the motion as requested. So we have Councillor Johns moving clause 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. And clause number 4 will read that council grant draft plan approval to plan of subdivision 19T 2201, subject to draft plan conditions included as Appendix 5 to Development Services Report DS 2024-14 as amended, to include the language from the trustee. Okay. Any questions on the motion? Councillor Johns?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So I move the motion in entirety.
Okay.
So if it is desired that that's not the case, should I rescind my motion?
What you can do, if you're comfortable, is I would then call a separate vote, you making the motion for clause number 5.
Yeah,
And
I
then
think
would
that's
call a
appropriate.
second. That was my
I
plan
am-
here. Sorry, I should have clarified that for you folks.
Yeah. I don't know if we need, I understand the diverse opinions are on the table. I think that, I just Googled Fuyin Way, and I don't know the street naming policy. I don't believe that I was here when that came to fruition and whatnot, but I do think that as the community is changing and developing, I think the opportunity to ensure that it is welcoming, and I Googled it, and Fuyin Way it says happy entertainment, and I think the attempt to, and obviously it was something special for the person that is looking to build this happy entertainment place, it meant something, and so that's my opinion on that, because I don't know what the street naming policy was, and I think that if I was a part of the street naming policy procedure, maybe I would vote a different way, but as it is right now, and fully respect others' opinions, but as it is right now, I move the motion in whole, so I think a separate vote would probably be, unless you want me to take back my motion.
You would like to see it all at once?
I'm just saying procedurally, I moved it.
Yes.
So I'm still good to move it. I'm not good to amend it, is what I'm
Okay.
suggesting.
So
Okay.
I'm not amending it.
Okay.
The only thing that I have amended was the clause that staff have advised us that the trustee needs to include language to show that they are party to the financial agreement with respect to servicing. So Appendix 5 of the report is being amended to add some legal language. That's the only thing that's being changed.
Okay, I don't think I understand. My apologies for my ignorance. So you're
Okay.
saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, item 5 is the street naming, correct?
Yeah, so I pulled that aside. Would you like to move the entire thing? I can call that
I
vote.
could, I'm not meaning to be challenging on the
No.
logistics. I'm just trying to understand what I'm voting on, because so could I ask that Councillor Crothers give me clarification on the Appendix 5, because I think she knows where I'm not understanding it.
Yes, go ahead. And then I have Councillor Leahy who would also like to speak.
Okay, there's 5 different resolutions, but resolution number 4 refers to an Appendix 5 that was amended. Okay, so right before the street naming, the council grant draft approval to the plan of subdivision, subject to the draft plan conditions included in Appendix 5 of the report.
Got it.
So that's the 5. There's 2 different number 5s.
Okay.
One is the appendix, one is the clause. And although you've moved the whole thing, it's my right under our procedural bylaw to have one, to pull one out.
Got it.
You can still move it, but it's my right to have
Cool.
a separate vote.
Perfect.
So,
Okay.
That's where I was heading. Thank you for clarifying, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to do that. Go ahead, Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. Before we proceed with any vote, I wanted to just bring to your attention, because I am a speaker of the Mandarin language, that it should be pronounced Fujian. So I would like it be referred to as much as possible as Fujian when we're discussing it. But I would like to ask for the chair's indulgence, if it's possible. We have the presenter and the representative from Welland Developments right here in council chambers now, and it might be helpful to hear some of his feedback or ask him questions before we take a vote, because it may provide some clarity on the developer's position on this.
Mr. Clerk, I believe that would require us to waive the procedural bylaw, am I correct? To allow for another speaker at this time?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure that this would be another deputation. I know that Mr. Wong was attending to respond to questions on behalf of the
Okay.
applicant.
Members of committee, would you like to entertain having Mr. Wong come to the microphone? What I would like to do is get these first clauses done, and then we can deal with clause number 5 about the naming after that. So at this point, I have a motion on the table from Councillor Johns with all of the clauses, one being amended to add the legal language, and the second to last clause about the street names being pulled for a separate vote, but we'll discuss that after. So are we clear on what we're voting? All those in favor? And that motion carries. Okay, so Mr. Wong, would you like to speak to us about Fujian? Fujian. It's a province in China. That's what I understood.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I love every opportunity to speak in front of all of you. I would like to first respond to Councillor Leahy. That pronunciation is probably better than I do, though Mandarin is not my first language. But Fujian, it is exactly how it's pronounced. And my understanding, as I was assisting Welland in terms of the street selection as part of this draft plan of subdivision application, Fujian is actually a city where the owner originated from in China. So there is a symbolic and memory and value to that aspect of it. And if I understand the street naming policy correctly as well, to sort of provide a response to Councillor Carruthers' comments, there is a miscellaneous category within the street naming policy/application, and at the time we interpreted that the Fujian name could fall under that category, aside from those being council approval on the inventory list. And out of the 4 streets, we have selected 3 out of the inventory list, and we left one as being the street A, being named Fujian. And obviously, because of the value and the connection that the owner had with this property, and there's some connection there in terms of the preferences naming that street the way it is being proposed here. So hopefully that present and provides some clarity to the conversation here as it relates to the street name. And happy to answer any more further questions and comment on that.
Thank you for that context, Mr. Wong. Any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Ms. Gandhi.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. I think that while we do have our street naming policy, I think there's also a lens from the EDI framework, which is engage, educate, and express. And street names is certainly an element of that expression component. So I just want to invite council to consider that perspective as well.
Okay. Councillor Carruthers, go ahead.
Thank you. My comments are more on our street naming policy that we agonized over, rather than this name in particular. So I was very much in favor of broadening our street naming policy to include more, and there was a lot of pushback from council that, no, we had to stick with historic EG names. So my comment is more around that if now on the fly, we're not going to stick to our policy, then why did we dig in our heels when we were making that policy? So I think to your point, Councillor Roy-DiClemente, that if it is no longer the will of council to have all names being historic EG, that we need to open up that policy again. And the other point that I was making was about these Indigenous veteran names that we brought forward, that council had a priority of making sure that they were put forward. We're not going to have a developer who wants, who has a connection to an Indigenous veteran that's necessarily going to want to name their street after an Indigenous veteran. So it becomes on us to be pushing for the names that we feel the town needs to see. So it's not so much about this one name, it's about the historical context of how long we spent defending that the names had to be historic DG. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Leahy, and then I think I'd like to see us move forward on this clause, and then I will entertain a second or an outside resolution regarding the naming policy. Go ahead, Councillor Leahy.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for waiving the policies so that we could hear from the presenter of this development. And I appreciate the fact that he has provided the context as well as shared with us their thinking behind it, and in fact presented it in a sense while respecting the street list from a heritage perspective, that this is also an opportunity to be more inclusive and to reflect the perspective of the developer's owner. So I don't think that it is, in fact, in my opinion, going against our policy, because it does fit into that category of miscellaneous. But I appreciate the context and the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I have a motion, I believe I still have a motion on the table from Councillor Johns, that we endorse the proposed street names as presented. Any comments or further comments on that? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. I'm supporting the motion. So that motion is carried, and we can move forward. I would like to, at this point, create a pause for any member of committee who would like to put forward a motion regarding the policy itself, and any opportunity to revisit if we feel that it needs to be at this time. Speak now or forever hold your peace, or at least for 6 months. Okay, so that's the end of our prepared agenda. Ms. Bégin, do you have anything further to add at this time?
Through you, Madam Chair, nothing at this time. Thank you.
I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We are on item H, and that is Engineering and Public Works with Councillor Leahy in the chair.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. We have 3 items on the agenda today in the Engineering and Public Works Department. And the first item is with regard to the speed limit reduction on Centre Street and Doane Road, and an all-way stop installation at Centre Street and Doane Road intersection. Can I have a mover for this, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Crone. And General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So staff have reviewed speed limits and traffic safety concerns in Mount Albert and along Centre Street, as well as along Doane Road. The speed limit on Centre Street varies between 50 and 70 from King Street to Queensville Side Road. And based on our review, staff are proposing to reduce the 70 kilometer per hour speed limit for its full length down to 60 kilometers per hour, which would provide some consistency along that roadway and reduce some confusion. So essentially, the proposed speed limits would be 50 kilometers per hour until approximately 500 meters north of King Street, then 60 kilometers all the way up to Queensville Side Road, which provides that consistency that I was speaking to earlier. So on Doane Road, staff are proposing that the speed limit be reduced to a more appropriate speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour, given the existing traffic speeds from west of Centre Street to the York-Durham line. And we just like to note that YRP will be requested to assist with enforcement to ensure compliance with the speed limit revisions. With
Thank-
respect to the,
sorry.
with respect to the all-way stop at Doane Road and Center Street, staff have completed some significant work to upgrade the roadway to provide paved shoulders. We've cleared vegetation, we've adjusted signage so that it's not obstructing visibility at the intersection. We also note that none of the warrants were met, and so an all-way stop is not recommended. So installing all-way stops in unwarranted locations, especially in rural ones, can often create confusion as motorists are not expecting an all-way stop. And further, area residents are not accustomed to having cross-traffic, and so sometimes these locations provide compliance issues and can actually make the intersection less safe by putting in an all-way stop. So just wanted to provide that context for council, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, General Manager Molinari. We appreciate that. Are there any questions from any members of council? Yes, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just more or less a comment. Thank you for this. I think, traffic calming is probably one of the most numerous complaint we get as councillors, certainly in my ward. And I appreciate your efforts on this. And I thank you for engaging YRP, because I think there is a limit to what we as a council can legislate against reckless driving, and their enforcement becomes a big component in it, so and of it. So thank you very much for this, and I hope it'll help remedy things. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I would like to take a vote. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much. And are there any other, let's see, we'll move on to item number 2 then. The Joint Engineering and Public Works Department Recreation and Culture Report, Design Contract Award, P24-08, Mount Albert Storm Outfalls, Retaining Wall and Trail Design. Can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Johns. And General Manager Molinari, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So this is a standard award report from a procurement perspective, in that it proposes to award the project to the highest scoring proponent for the RFP. The project is slightly unusual from the standpoint that it has a number of elements and options that will be worked through during the design process, and depending on the options selected, there will be studies and site investigations, work to be completed, maybe some geotechnical work, utility relocating, extra design, public consultation, etc. So a lot of the next steps are variable, and because of that variability, there's a significant number of works that have been put into provisional items on this particular project, which will only be used as and when necessary in order to complete the project. So moving forward in this way means that we do not have to run the project with the risk of having to come back to council to secure extra funding to do the works that need to be done, and it allows us to complete the project efficiently. So with that context, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, General Manager Molinari. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Crone, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Molinari. This is very welcome news. I know it's been a long time coming, and there were other parties involved which factored in. Help me understand, does this include, I know we had some challenges along the end of Alice Street and some of the residents there. Does this factor in the design? Does that factor in remedying their situation that they're having with the erosion of the bank behind them?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it does. So it deals with the outfalls. We'll do slope stability work on those outfalls, replace the outfalls, and it should address those concerns that were raised by that resident.
You'll have a lot of happy people in Mount Albert. Thank you for this.
Yes, Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if the project, I know that we were pretty adamant that we wanted to maintain the trail system through that area in order to create loops, and I'm just wondering if through some of this work, there at this point, we're designing, if I'm correct, we're designing what this would look like from an engineering perspective, and we're getting options. If it looks like it's going to be eye-wateringly expensive, is there an alternate route that we might be able to create through that valley, to create a loop, but not necessarily have to engage with a huge, expensive retaining wall for the purpose of creating a loop on a trail? Maybe that's a question better directed to Mr. Karmazin, Mr. Molinari, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes, please go ahead, General Manager Molinari.
Through you, Madam Chair, perhaps General Manager Karmazin can assist me with this one after a couple comments. But one of the things that's great about this project is that we actually have the LSRCA as a partner in part of the work. So we will be reaching out to them. We'll be looking at different options. Maybe there's an option to relocate that trail closer to the creek. But you know, what we've envisioned is tasking the consultant with looking at a couple of different options, and then we'd come back to council with some costs and some options and determine what next steps are. But as I mentioned before, we wanted to make sure that we secured the funding for this, all these options, so that we could expedite the project in an efficient manner. So there will be some points of contact with council through this project to kind of make those decisions and move the project forward.
Thank you. I know we absolutely have to address the erosion and stormwater issues in that area, but as far as the trail is concerned, it may make more sense for us to simply grade rather than reinstall an expensive retaining wall on private property. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a question in there that you would like to
Just a statement. I was
address
reassured.
to-
I was reassured that we would be looking at other options for the trail. Thank you.
You did not allow me to finish. Thank you very much, Councillor. I was going to ask if you had a question that would be well directed towards our General Manager of Parks and Recreation, if you would like to ask a question of him.
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Madam.
Very good. Any other questions from members of council? Yes, Councillor Johns.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of note my appreciation. Like this, the funding we approved under the repair and replacement budget the last time, and the staff report does note the 518. Like my concern from the kind of entrepreneurial business side is that whenever we set a budget for something, or all the tenders that we receive going to come in around, oh look, they just happen to cost 507, 512, and I was just really pleased to see that we're $200,000 under budget, and the fact that it's coming from the repair and replacement line that we are working so hard to pick up pennies on. I just wanted to congratulate staff for their efforts in delivering the infrastructure that we needed well under budget. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments that anyone would like to make? Seeing none, I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And the final third item today is the Recreation and Culture Memo, Highway 11 and Yonge Street Multi-Use Path and Lighting Award. Can I have a mover for this, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Roy-DiClemente. And General Manager Molinari, thank you for your speaking to this. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So this memo is being provided as a project update. Phase 1, which is to be administered by the region, includes the reconstruction of Yonge Street from Green Lane to Morningside Road, and Highway 11 from Bathurst to the bridge spanning the Holland River and King. So the town's portion includes roadway lighting, multi-use path, and lighting for the multi-use path at a cost of approximately $625,000. We expect construction to start early summer to fall of this year, and phases 2 and 3 are expected to proceed in 2025 and 2026 respectively, and we can provide a memo in the future as those phase 2 and phase 3 projects start getting close on the radar. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, I have a question. Could you speak a little bit more to the type of lighting that is being installed and information about that type of lighting, if in the future it will be cost saving, etc.?
I think I will refer that to our project manager, Ray Rizala.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of council. Certainly, so all the lighting in the project will be built to LED standards following RP8. And certainly the LED standards are cost savings with regards to maintenance and the operating costs as compared to traditional high pressure sodium lights.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? No, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. And that motion passes. To the end of the agenda for today, but before we close, I'd like to ask General Manager Molinari if he has any other comments to make.
Nothing further at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from members of council? Seeing none, I will pass it back to you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are at item I, Parks, Recreation, Culture with Councillor Cronin, the chair. And it just seems to be one item, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We indeed have one item. It is Parks and Recreation Culture Memorandum, new development project update. Mr. Carmison, please go ahead and share this with us.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is a prepared item. It's a memo to inform council and the public on the status of our Parks and Trails capital program. The memo provides an update on 14 separate projects with expected completion dates into 2024 and early 2025. I should note that all projects are within the approved budgets and within the timelines set for the project completion. I'd like to extend a sincere thank you to our Parks project team, including Frank Mazzata, Justin Tucker, John Ingram, Stephanie Fraser, and Emma Pothian. Happy to answer any questions related to the memo or any of the projects project status provided in the memo.
Thank you, Mr. Carmison. This is indeed an exhaustive list. Your team has been busy, and it doesn't include the Health and Active Living Plaza in it as well. So kudos to you and your team. Any questions for Mr. Carmison? Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. Thank you for this list and update. It's, I hope we can get this on a regular basis because there's a lot to keep track of. So having this all in one memo is very, very helpful. I do notice that the Oriole Wilderness Park is not in here. And in light of the presentation this morning from the residents, I'm hoping that we can have a follow-up on the plans for that going forward. I know it's been paused since our meeting with residents a number of months ago, and so I'm looking forward to finding out what the plans are with that. But I just want to say thank you for this update.
Mr. Carmison, do you have anything to add?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at the direction of council, staff have taken a pause related to the Oriole Drive Nature Park. And we've taken a pause related to the siting as well as an extension of the public consultation period and a review of potential alternate sites within the community west of the Holland River. And we anticipate a report back in the fall of 2024.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for Mr. Carmison? Councillor Johns.
Recognizing we're riding the time tight, I just want to say congratulations because this is incredible, and the amount of excitement that if the whole community could take a look and look at this report, I think there's so much for us to be proud of as a town. I just wanted to say thank you to yourself and your staff and say congratulations on the great work, because this really does personify in the community the efforts that we're going to here sitting at this table to have you bring it to life. So I just wanted to say thank you because it's really impressive.
Well said. Any other questions or comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you to council and nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing further, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Just
carried.
need a mover,
Oh,
Mr. Chair.
right. Councillor Roy-DiClemente has minor details. Any, Mr. Karmazin, do you have anything else you'd like to share with committee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing further. Thank you.
Does committee have anything for Mr. Karmazin? Seeing none, I will pass the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We are on item J and with Councillor Crothers in the chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have just one item under corporate services today, and that is a memo on the Energy Board's decision on natural gas. And this is a follow-up to council direction on February 21st. We had received a number of memos or letters in regard to this, and we wanted just some clarification. So that memo is here just for receipt. I don't think we need Ms. Ross to take us through the whole thing, but if anyone has any questions on that, she's happy to answer them now. Seeing none, can I have someone move receipt? Councillor Johns, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Is there anything else, any other questions under corporate services? Ms. Gandhi?
No, through you, Madam Chair. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Seeing none, I'll hand the chair back to you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are at item K, a finance memo, Heritage Properties Tax Relief Potential Financial Impact.
Madam Mayor, this was the item that I previously declared conflict of interest on, and I just felt for consistency reasons, if you felt comfortable with chairing this. This memo is for informational purposes, but I wanted to make sure that I was step back from the conversation, and my chairing probably wasn't appropriate.
Always appreciated. So we are looking at General Marshall with the report.
So
Please.
through you, Madam Mayor, after the, or as part of the May 14th special council meeting, staff were asked to come back with some potential financial impacts of providing some financial relief to heritage properties, and this memo outlines the potential impacts, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Lahey, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Marshall. In our previous discussions about possibilities of providing some relief to the owners of heritage properties, the question also came up of establishing a fund. And in terms of where the monies are going to, if we can provide potentially a discount and tax relief to the property owners, but is there any been there any discussion about creating a fund that monies could be taken out of to also provide some sort of support for the owners of heritage homes?
So through you, Madam Mayor, the municipalities are allowed to provide grants and loan programs, and there are some municipalities that have done that. The consultant that's been looking at the heritage strategy is doing some research around other municipalities that have done such programs, and we can provide that information back to you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, I need a mover. Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried.
My bad happens.
Yeah. And I'm just looking down. The next one is item L. I'm watching the time here as well. No, we haven't had a stretch. Legal and legislative services with myself in the chair. And any comments?
I'm happy to move this, Madam Chair, to get a table for discussion.
Thank you. All those in favor?
We're going to have some questions.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah,
to
no,
get
I'm
it
happy
on the-
to move it, just
that's
for
fine.
to
Okay.
speak to it.
to speak
Madam
to
Mayor.
it. That
Yep.
was my understanding as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Favor? Yes? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to speak to it. It's a legislative memo as it pertains to, I guess back in April, we had deputants come forward to us, and the staff report was presented here. I think that one question that I have from it, and I'll direct it to Mr. Molinari, I think the journey that we've been on, and the staff memo references the one resident at 1047 Mount Albert Road. I think my question was, is that is there one more unit available for the other resident that did the deputation located at 1029 Mount Albert Road? I think that I very much understand the position that we are in moving forward, and I recognize that we're talking about one unit. I'm just seeing if there's one additional unit to ensure that we are running parallel with our decision-making on these processes. Mr. Molinari.
Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, if council wishes to allocate an additional unit, you know, we can accommodate that. So we'll await council's decision on this matter.
So, Madam Mayor, then just in follow-up, I would like to have a resolution that does provide the sanitary servicing allocation for 1047, and I would like to also include 1029 Mount Albert Road in this as well.
Councillor Leahy, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much through you, Madam Mayor. I'm very happy to hear Councillor Johns' suggestion. I was in fact going to raise this myself. The gentleman in question, just to be clear, the gentleman's name was Mr. Simoni, and he made his own deputation on April 23rd and is in the public record also asking for a single unit of sewage allocation. At the time, the council of approving the conditional decision to allocate to Mr. Swirla, the council at that time did not make a conditional decision to allocate to Mr. Simoni, so I'm happy to see that situation is being addressed today. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our draft allocation policy that we came very close to addressing the issue included the ability for individual applications to be made in order to be able to address people who needed to do severances or create additional units of allocation on their properties. So if they were building a garden suite or they were adding a basement apartment legally and so on. So from my perspective, the decision that was made in 2017 was for these residents to be requested to wait until we had less of an issue with respect to allocation. Assigning these 2 units of allocation to individual property owners is not creating additional housing units for our community, and we do have a housing crisis. So I just wanted to point that out, that we are not actually creating any more houses by assigning these 2 units.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to speak to this. I think the deputants have been more than patient, and I think it's the right thing to do, and I'll be supporting this request for both units of allocation. Thank you.
It seems like it's been several years before we first heard about the first one, and to have the 2 and be able to provide the servicing, I think it's a good news story at the end of the day. I can't imagine having a home with children and not having the allocation, so I will be supporting it as well. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, go ahead, please.
Can we have the motion on the screen, please? I know that as we've been addressing this, the cost is not unsubstantial. The cost is not low. for these folks to have to connect. And so I want to make sure that that is reflected in our resolution, that while we are assigning these 2 units of allocation, that the property owners still have a significant financial commitment that they have to meet. And that has also been part of our conversations in the past, is these homeowners and property owners have been made abundantly aware of the significant cost that will be levied onto them in order to be able to connect. Not in comparable to a new septic system, of course, but that we still reflect that that also needs to be addressed. Is that in the resolution, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I've drafted the resolution based on the previous one that was approved pending the report, using the same language. And I don't want to speak to the memo myself, but I believe it doesn't include language in the memo about the costs.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Any other questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We are at Legal and Legislative Services with myself in the chair, and I'm looking at the clock. It is 12 noon. We've been sitting for quite some time. What's your pleasure of continuing along?
Yes, we have other business,
Okay.
and that's it.
Okay. Okay, with that, we will deal with legal and legislative.
Other.
Ah. That's helpful. We have no reports on the agenda. Fire and Emergency Services with Councillor Foster as the chair. There is nothing on there. Thank you. And other business, East Gwillimbury Mayor and Council Charity Golf Tournament Committee Memo, Youth and Community Initiatives Fund Update 2019-2023, Fund Program Review, Fund Rebranding. I think we have some people in the audience that might be very knowledgeable about this. Susan Boyne-Bird is with us, and Gina's with us as well, and that's the team that puts the golf tournament together, a mighty team of 2. I do know you have a few extra helpers along the way, but these are the 2 ladies that make it happen for sure. Do we have any questions from council regarding the golf tournament? Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I want to start by congratulating this group. Seeing this report and the amount of money that you have raised, the amount of work that's gone into it, congratulations. It's wonderful to see this before us. I have just a question about, since we were doing committee reviews, I'm wondering why this wasn't part of that, because this does seem to be committee, and it says that there's a bylaw that establishes who's on the committee, and I'm just wondering if we can get some feedback from staff. Is this somehow separate, or is this a committee of council that should be part of that review? I just want to get some input from staff on that.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. There seems to be some discrepancies with respect to whether or not this is a committee of council or it isn't. So we will need to look into that further.
Thank you. I look forward to that, just to make sure that we're being consistent and that all our committees are being looked at. This is certainly a good one that we need to keep for sure. I also had a question about the logo, because I know when the youth group wanted to have their own logo, we were told no logos other than the East Gwillimbury logo. So I'm wondering how this fits into that.
Through you, Madam Chair. So we are actually working on updating our brand guidelines to reinforce the fact that our brand is the EG logo, and that is the emphasis. In fact, the main point of focus. I don't have the history as to why there was a logo originally assigned to this committee, and then going back into the what our town solicitor is saying in terms of this, where exactly this committee fits. I think that's another part of the question. But our preference is to not have any logos anywhere other than the EG logo.
Thank you. And then my other question was on the report itself that talks about dropping the community initiatives portion of this and having this focus just on youth. And I think that's great to be supporting our youth. And my question would just be, when we have community initiatives that are looking for support, Madam Mayor, where would they apply to, if not to something like this? Is there another fund that we have that we can direct them to?
Mr. Marshall?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We do have the contingency account that Mayor and Council controls that could be used to fund any initiatives that are applied for.
Thank you. That's appreciated. I just feel like I want more structure around this, since we are looking at our other committees, and I don't want to do anything to stop the great work that's being done, but just to make sure that we're very clear on when people are asking for money, where we're directing them to. And even though there hasn't been a big uptake, when there is, I think it's nice to be able to have a place to direct them to, rather than just the Mayor and Council Contingency Fund, which I think would be a little bit more difficult for community groups to access. So I would just like us to take a little deeper look into this without in any way stepping on what this group is doing.
Thank you. Councillor LaHaye, go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. I also share my fellow councillors' questions regarding the desire to have more structure around this committee. The very name of the committee is EG Mayor and Council Charity Golf Tournament. So this is indeed a committee of council. Our name is on it. And with that said, it raises a very serious question of why it has taken 8 years for us to receive a report outlining the financial details of the applications and where the funds have been going. And I would like to understand the reasons why there has been an 8-year gap in reporting on this. Thank you very much.
Any other comments, questions? I'm not, Councillor Roy-DiClemente, go ahead.
I'm just looking for some clarification. I think time goes fast, but I don't know if it was 8 years since I've had information on this committee. I know that Ms. Casey and Ms. Boinbird are here and can answer questions. I certainly have not had any concerns about how the committee has operated, what they have done. Again, here's your history lesson. Once upon a time, we were approving. Thank you, Councillor Crone. I appreciate your attention. Once upon a time, we were approving expenditures in this chamber. And it became very awkward to meet people in the community when you knew that A, they were struggling, and B, you may or may not have sent their kids to camp. Or as members of council, I would overhear people boasting that they had gotten money from the fund, and yet they had also just gone to Disneyland, and so or Disney World. So it created a necessary distance where we raise the funds through the golf tournament, and we hand them over to people who we trust, respect, and know our community, who understand where the needs are, and they have dispersed the funds in a very transparent fashion as far as I'm concerned, and we have had reporting. I know that it was somewhat delayed recently, but it hasn't been 8 years since we've received a report on the committee's activities.
Councillor LaHaye, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. Well, then I would ask that there be clarification, because my reading of the report made a point of stating that they had not provided a report since 2018. That was in the report, as far as, if I am reading that correctly. Again, the title of the committee says E.G. Mayor and Council Charity Golf Tournament. And with all other committees, that we go through a very lengthy process of interviewing those who sit on the committee, as well as the town clerk's department goes through the processes involved with other committees. So I would like to, again, understand that the procedures that should be applied to any committee of council and why they were not applied to this particular one.
Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
We're rolling the ball down the hill. I actually, I'm looking for clarification, and I think we started to kind of touch on, there's more to explore here, but I'm sitting here, I don't actually believe that this is a committee of council, even though we have leadership and members of the community and staff liaison, and I recognize Councillor Carruthers talked about branding, and their staff talked about, yeah, we want the same logo, but I actually don't see it as a committee of council. I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong, and so then that way it will change my thinking on how to respond to this item and the discussion that's being had. But I don't see this as a committee of council. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm seeking clarification. Is it committee of council? Because then I can form an opinion one way or another, but right now, my position is it's not a committee of council.
Mr. Mulliner.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, we're actually going to look to see if this is a committee of council, and we can report back on what our findings are. From what I understand in a quick conversation with Mr. Marshall, there's no legislative or legal requirement to report on the funds on this, so it may have just been provided as information for council's information on this over the past few years. But we can certainly provide a little bit of information on what the context of this committee is, and kind of give some framework as to how it would work going forward. I hope that's helpful.
I'm seeing nods. Thank you. Thank you. With that, we will. I'm just having a look here. Be it resolved that the East Gwillimbury Mayor, E.G., sorry?
Move to receive.
Move to receive. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And could I have a motion to adjourn?
Happy to move that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried, and we are adjourning at 12:12. Thank you very much.